I always thought Clara and I were unbreakable. Married for 12 years, we built a life in Seattle that shimmered with quiet pride. A cozy craftsman home, a garden we tended together, and our daughter, Lily, who lit up our world. I'm Ethan, a structural engineer, methodical by nature, piecing together bridges like puzzles. Clara, a graphic designer, brought color to my grayscale precision. We were a team, or so I believed. Started subtly like a hairline crack in concrete. Clara's late nights at the studio grew frequent. She'd return with paint smudged on her cheek, her laughter a little too bright, her eyes dodging mine. I chalked it up to deadlines, her passion for her craft. But then I found a sketch in her bag. A charcoal drawing of a man's hand, not mine, with a note scrawled in her handwriting. Asterisk, meet me at the pier, 8 p.m. Asterisk, my stomach twisted, but I buried the unease. Trust was our foundation, wasn't it? I began noticing her phone's glow at odd hours, her fingers dancing across the screen, a secret smile tugging at her lips. She'd say it was a client, but the air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but fear of shattering our life kept me silent. Instead, I watched, cataloging every shift in her behavior. The way she'd linger in the shower, the new perfume that clung to her skin, sharp and unfamiliar. One evening, I followed her. She told me she was meeting a colleague, but I trailed her to the waterfront, my heart pounding like a sledgehammer. There, under the flickering lights of the pier, I saw her with him, Jasper, her old art school friend, now a sculptor with a reputation for charm. They stood too close, her hand brushing his arm, their laughter intertwining like vines. It wasn't overt, but it was intimate, a betrayal woven into their shared glances. My chest burned, not with rage but with a hollow ache. I drove home, the image of them seared into my mind, and began to plan. This wasn't just about Clara's wandering heart. It was about something deeper, something I couldn't yet name. Jasper wasn't a lover in the traditional sense. Their connection was cerebral, artistic, a merging of minds that cut me out. It was a betrayal of our shared dreams, of the life we'd built. I wouldn't let it stand. Revenge, I decided, would be meticulous, cruel in its precision, and it would unravel them both without ever raising a fist. The days after the pier were a masterclass in restraint. I woke each morning, kissed Clara's forehead, and poured her coffee, my hands steady despite the storm inside. She'd smile, oblivious to the fact that I'd seen her truth, and I'd mirror her warmth, a perfect actor in our domestic play. Lily's chatter about school filled the silences, but every word Clara spoke felt like a needle under my skin. I needed to understand the depth of her betrayal before I struck. Jasper, I learned, was more than a fleeting muse. Through subtle digging, checking her laptop when she slept, noting her calendar, I discovered they'd been meeting for months, not just at the pier but at galleries, cafes, even his loft studio. Their connection wasn't physical in the way most would assume. It was an emotional affair, a blending of their creative souls. Clara's sketches, once inspired by our life, now carried Jasper's influence. Bold, chaotic lines that screamed his style. She was pouring herself into him, leaving me as an afterthought. I started researching Jasper. He was 38, unmarried, with a cult following in the art world. His Instagram was a gallery of sculptures and cryptic captions, many liked by Clara's private account. I found emails between them, not overtly romantic but laced with a private language. Phrases like, our shared vision, and asterisk, you see me like no one else. Asterisk, each word was a betrayal, a theft of the intimacy I thought was ours. I printed them, filing them in a locked drawer, evidence for the reckoning to come. At night, I'd lie beside Clara, her breathing soft, and plot. Revenge couldn't be impulsive. It had to be a structure, each piece calculated to collapse their world. I considered exposing them, but that was too simple, too fleeting. Instead, I'd dismantle their bond from the inside, using their own passions against them. Jasper's ego, Clara's need for validation, they were vulnerabilities I could exploit. I began sketching my own design, not of bridges but of ruin. I kept up appearances, even joining Clara at an art show where Jasper was featured. I shook his hand, my grip firm, my smile unwavering. "Impressive work," I said, watching his eyes flicker with unease. Clara beamed, unaware I was laying the first beam of my plan. That night, I ordered a burner phone and created an anonymous email account. The game was beginning, and I'd play it with the precision of an engineer, building a trap they'd never see coming. My plan took shape like a blueprint, each line deliberate. I needed to infiltrate their world without raising suspicion, to become a shadow in their shared space. Using the burner phone, I posed as a wealthy art collector, Victor Klein, and emailed Jasper, praising his latest sculpture, a towering piece of twisted metal he'd unveiled at the show. I hinted at a commission, something grand for a private estate, and requested a meeting. He replied within hours, his tone eager, laced with the arrogance I'd anticipated. I arranged the meeting at an upscale bar, but I didn't show. Instead, I watched from a corner, nursing a whiskey, as Jasper fidgeted, checking his phone. I'd hired a woman, a freelance actress, to pose as Victor's assistant. She arrived late, apologetic, and fed him a story about Victor's eccentric demands, a sculpture that would redefine legacy. Jasper lapped it up, his ego inflating with every word. She slipped him a contract, vague but enticing, with a promise of a massive deposit. He signed without hesitation. Meanwhile, I turned my attention to Clara. I knew her insecurities, her fear that her work wasn't groundbreaking, that she'd never outshine her peers. I anonymously submitted one of her older designs to a local art contest, forging her signature. When she won, the praise flooded in, but I ensured the judges' feedback included subtle critiques, questioning her originality. I saw the doubt creep into her eyes at dinner, her fork pausing mid-air as she mentioned the win. "They said it felt derivative," she murmured. I nodded sympathetically, planting the first seed of unease. At home, I kept the facade flawless. I cooked her favorite meals, planned a weekend hike with Lily, even complimented her latest sketches. But I was always watching, noting how she'd check her phone when she thought I wasn't looking, how her laughter felt forced. I hacked into her cloud storage, easier than I'd expected with her predictable passwords, and found more sketches, some co-created with Jasper. They were planning a joint exhibit, a collaboration of souls. The phrase made my jaw clench, but it gave me focus. Their exhibit would be my battlefield. By week's end, Jasper was chasing Victor, sending frantic emails about the commission. I responded sporadically, stringing him along with promises of funds that never came. The actress reported his growing agitation, how he'd snapped at a barista, his confidence fraying. Clara, too, was unraveling, second-guessing her work after the contest. My revenge was a slow burn, a structure rising brick by brick. They'd built their betrayal on shared dreams. I'd tear it down by turning those dreams into nightmares. Jasper's desperation was palpable now, a crack spreading through his polished veneer. I'd escalated the Victor Klein ruse, having the actress deliver a crate of rare marble to his studio, supposedly for the commission. The invoice, sent from a fake company, demanded payment within 30 days. $15,000 he didn't have. His emails to Victor grew frantic, begging for the promised deposit. I replied with cryptic delays, citing logistical issues. I knew his finances were shaky. A quick check of public records showed he defaulted on a loan last year. This was pressure he couldn't withstand. Clara, meanwhile, was spiraling in her own way. I'd orchestrated more subtle blows to her confidence. Using another anonymous account, I posted critiques of her contest-winning design on art forums, questioning its authenticity. I seeded comments suggesting she'd mimic Jasper's style, knowing they'd reach her. She was obsessive about online feedback. At breakfast, she barely touched her toast, her eyes distant. "People are saying I'm just copying him," she said, voice small. I feigned concern, but inside, I was laying another beam in my plan. I deepened my infiltration of their world. Posing as a gallery assistant, I contacted the curator of their planned joint exhibit, planting doubts about Jasper's reliability. I forwarded doctored emails, fakes that looked like Jasper badmouthing the gallery's vision. The curator's responses grew cold, and I knew the exhibit was at risk. Clara mentioned the curator's weird vibe one night, her brow furrowed. I nodded, suggesting maybe Jasper wasn't pulling his weight. The seed of distrust was sprouting. At home, I kept my role as the devoted husband airtight. I surprised Clara with a spa day, insisting she needed a break. While she was gone, I accessed her laptop again, downloading their exhibit proposal. It was ambitious, sculptures and paintings interwoven, a narrative of shared discovery. Reading it felt like swallowing glass, but it gave me clarity. I'd sabotage the exhibit, not with a grand gesture but with 1,000 small cuts, each one eroding their bond. Jasper's studio was my next target. I hired a teenager to spray paint graffiti on his building's exterior. Nothing traceable, just enough to rattle him. The next day, his Instagram story showed the damage, captioned with a rant about haters. I smiled, knowing his paranoia was growing. Clara, too, was fraying, snapping at Lily over spilled juice, her patience thin. My revenge was working, a slow demolition of their shared world. I wasn't done. The next phase would be bolder, striking at the heart of their collaboration, and I'd ensure they'd never recover. The exhibit was 6 weeks away, and my plan was a machine now, gears grinding with precision. Jasper was drowning in the marble debt, his calls to Victor unanswered. I'd hacked his email, his security was laughably weak, and found messages to Clara, venting about the commission's collapse. "I'm in deep," he wrote. "I need you." Her reply was warm but strained, promising to help brainstorm. Their bond was still strong, but I saw the fault lines. I'd widen them until they shattered. I escalated with Clara. Using another fake account, I sent her an anonymous tip about Jasper's financial troubles, hinting he'd been using her name to secure loans. It was a lie, but plausible enough to sting. She didn't mention it, but I saw her scrolling through bank statements one night, her lips tight. I amplified her doubt by accidentally leaving a news article about art world scams on the kitchen counter, knowing she'd read it. Her trust in Jasper was eroding, brick by brick. The gallery was my next lever. Posing as a concerned artist, I emailed the curator, alleging Jasper had plagiarized a lesser-known sculptor's work. I included side-by-side images, manipulated to look damning. The curator didn't reply, but Clara came home fuming days later. "They're auditing Jasper's portfolio," she said, pacing. "They think he stole ideas." I feigned shock, but my pulse quickened. The exhibit was teetering, and with it, their partnership. I struck at Jasper's psyche next. I hired a courier to deliver an anonymous package to his studio. A broken mirror with a note. Asterisk, "You're falling apart." Asterisk, childish, perhaps, but effective. His next Instagram post was a cryptic poem about betrayal, and Clara liked it, her comment vague but supportive. Their loyalty to each other was stubborn, but I was relentless. I leaked a rumor to a local art blog, suggesting their exhibit was a front for money laundering. The post went viral, and Clara's phone buzzed with panic texts from colleagues. At home, I was the anchor she didn't deserve. I held her as she cried, blaming the toxic art scene. "We'll get through this," I said, my voice steady, my mind cold. Lily was my only tether to humanity. Her drawings, pinned to the fridge, reminded me why I couldn't falter. My revenge wasn't just for me. It was for the family Clara had betrayed. The next phase would be the cruelest yet, a strike that would leave their dreams in rubble, and I was ready to swing the hammer. Clara's confidence was crumbling, and Jasper's world was a house of cards in a windstorm. My revenge was a symphony now, each note precise, building to a crescendo. The art blog rumor about money laundering had spread like wildfire, and the gallery was under scrutiny. Clara came home late, her eyes red, muttering about canceled sponsorships. "They're questioning everything," she said, slumping into a chair. I poured her wine, my face a mask of concern, while inside I orchestrated the next move. Using the Victor Klein alias, I sent Jasper a cryptic email, implying the marble debt could be forgiven if he delivered a new sculpture by week's end. an impossible deadline. I knew he'd try. His pride wouldn't let him refuse. Sure enough, his social media showed him in the studio at 3 a.m., tools scattered, his hands trembling in a video he posted. I smiled, knowing exhaustion would make him sloppy, vulnerable. To deepen the wound, I sent an anonymous tip to a rival sculptor, suggesting Jasper was copying their techniques. The rival's public accusation hit the next day, further tainting Jasper's name. Clara was my focus now. I needed her to doubt not just Jasper but herself. I created a fake client, Elena Voss, who emailed Clara, praising her work but requesting a redesign of a recent project, citing unoriginal elements. The critique was subtle, echoing the contest feedback I'd engineered. Clara spent hours revising, her laptop screen glowing late into the night. I'd catch her staring at her sketches, muttering, "It's not good enough." Her spark was fading, and I was the one dimming it, stroke by stroke. I sabotaged their exhibit further. Posing as a city inspector, I contacted the gallery, claiming zoning issues with their planned outdoor installation. The curator, already rattled, postponed the exhibit indefinitely. Clara was devastated, blaming Jasper's messy reputation. I nodded, suggesting she distance herself to save her career. "You're the real talent," I said, planting a wedge between them. She didn't reply, but her silence was heavy, a sign the fracture was deepening. At night, I'd lie awake, Clara's breathing soft beside me, and refine my plan. Lily's laughter during our weekend pancake mornings kept me grounded, but my resolve was iron. Clara and Jasper had built a world without me, and I'd ensure it collapsed. The next phase would strike at their core, their shared vision, their belief in each other. I'd make them strangers, and they'd never see my hand in it. Jasper was unraveling, and I was the architect of his chaos. The impossible deadline I'd set as victor pushed him to the edge. His latest sculpture, rushed and flawed, was panned by a local critic I'd tipped off anonymously. The review called it a desperate grasp at relevance, and Jasper's Instagram went silent, a rare retreat. I knew he was checking Clara's messages, seeking her reassurance, but I'd ensured she was too fragile to offer it. My fake client, Elena, had sent Clara another scathing critique, this time questioning her entire portfolio. Clara was barely sleeping, her eyes hollow, her sketches abandoned. I deepened the rift between them. Using a cloned email address, I sent Clara a forged message from Jasper, written in his verbose style, implying she was holding him back. "Your hesitation is killing our vision," it read. She didn't confront him, but I saw her withdraw, her replies to his texts curt. I mirrored the tactic with Jasper, sending him a fake message from Clara, suggesting she was exploring solo projects. His response was a rambling voicemail, left on her phone while I listened in secret, pleading for her to stay with me. The desperation in his voice was music to my ears. The gallery was my next target. I leaked doctored financial records to a local journalist, suggesting the curator had mismanaged funds tied to Jasper's exhibit. The story broke, and the art community turned on the gallery, with Clara and Jasper caught in the crossfire. Clara's phone buzzed with colleagues distancing themselves, and she cried in the kitchen, unaware I'd lit the match. "Why is this happening?" she whispered. I hugged her, my touch a lie, and said, "Some people attract chaos." The jab landed, her eyes flickering with doubt about Jasper. I kept my life with Lily untouched, a sanctuary amid the wreckage. We built a birdhouse together, her small hands gluing wood while I taught her about balance. But even then, my mind was on the plan. I hired a hacker to breach Jasper's cloud storage, downloading his unfinished designs. I sent them anonymously to a rival gallery, claiming he'd stolen them. The rival's lawsuit threat hit the next day, and Jasper's frantic posts online showed he was breaking. Clara was retreating into herself, her trust in Jasper and her art eroded. I was close to my goal, isolating them, stripping their shared dream to rubble. But I wasn't done. The next move would be personal, a betrayal they'd feel in their bones, and I'd deliver it with the precision of a blade. I became Clara's confidant, a role I played with chilling ease. She'd sit at our dining table, her laptop closed, and pour out her fears. About the exhibit's collapse, Jasper's recklessness, the whispers in the art world. I listened, nodding, offering advice that seemed supportive but was laced with poison. Maybe you need to step back from him, I suggested, my tone gentle. Focus on your own work. She sighed, her fingers tracing the table's grain, and I knew the idea was taking root. Jasper was my next puppet. I sent him an anonymous letter, handwritten to avoid tracing, warning that Clara was planning to cut ties and take credit for their joint work. I included a forged sketch, one of hers, with notes in her handwriting, stolen from her cloud, claiming the exhibit's concept as hers alone. His reply to her, which I intercepted, was furious, accusing her of betrayal. She responded with confusion, then anger, their texts a storm of misunderstandings I'd engineered. Their bond, once a fortress, was now a crumbling ruin. I turned the art community against them both. Posing as a disgruntled intern, I spread rumors on forums that Clara and Jasper had manipulated gallery connections for personal gain. The posts gained traction, and their peers began to shun them. Clara's inbox filled with canceled collaborations. Jasper's commissions dried up. I watched Clara at a networking event I'd encouraged her to attend. Standing alone by the bar, her smile forced as colleagues whispered. I was there, blending into the crowd, my presence unnoticed, my victory silent. At home, I kept the facade of the perfect husband. I planned a family movie night, letting Lily pick the film, her giggles a stark contrast to Clara's distracted silence. But I was always working, always plotting. I contacted a forger to create a fake contract, supposedly signed by Jasper, selling Clara's designs to a shady dealer. I leaked it to a gossip blog, framing it as Jasper's desperate bid for cash. Clara saw it and gasped, her trust in him shattered. How could he? She whispered. I shrugged, hiding my triumph. The final phase was approaching. I'd stripped them of their allies, their dreams, their faith in each other. But I wanted more. Not just ruin, but humiliation. A public unraveling that would echo for years. I began sketching the final blow, a trap so cruel it would leave them broken, and I'd watch from the shadows, my hands clean, my heart cold. The art world was a pressure cooker now, and I turned up the heat. I orchestrated a public event, a charity auction hosted by a rival gallery, where Clara and Jasper were invited as guests of honor. I ensured their attendance by having the curator personally call Clara, appealing to her pride. Jasper, desperate to salvage his reputation, agreed instantly. They didn't know I'd rigged the stage for their downfall. I worked with the forger again, creating a fake sculpture, a grotesque parody of Jasper's style, with elements clearly lifted from Clara's sketches. I donated it to the auction anonymously, labeled as a collaborative piece by them both. The catalog, which I'd influenced through a bribed assistant, praised it as their bold new direction. When it was unveiled, the crowd gasped, then whispered. It was hideous, amateurish, a mockery of their talents. Clara's face paled. Jasper's jaw tightened. The auctioneer, unaware of the ruse, opened bidding, but the room was silent, then erupted in snickers. I wasn't there. I couldn't risk it, but I watched the live stream, my laptop hidden in my office. Clara fled the stage, Jasper following, their humiliation broadcast to hundreds. Social media exploded, with memes of the sculpture spreading by morning. The art blog I'd used before ran a scathing piece, calling it a desperate cry for relevance. Their names were now punchlines, their careers in tatters. At home, Clara was a ghost. She barely spoke, her eyes fixed on some distant point. I don't understand, she said, her voice hollow. I held her hand, my touch a lie, and murmured, You'll rebuild. But I knew she wouldn't, not after this. Jasper's texts to her stopped. I'd hacked his phone and blocked her number, ensuring their silence was permanent. I spread a final rumor, claiming they'd split over creative differences, and their peers believed it, closing ranks against them both. Lily was my anchor, her innocence a reminder of why I'd started this. I read her bedtime stories, my voice steady, but my mind was on the endgame. One final blow remained, something to ensure they'd never recover, never rebuild. I'd take their past, their shared history, and turn it to ash. My revenge was nearly complete, and I felt no remorse, only the cold satisfaction of a job well done. Clara and Jasper were shadows of themselves, their bond severed, their reputations destroyed. But I wasn't finished. Revenge, like a bridge, needed a final keystone to hold it together. I wanted them to lose not just their present but their past, the memories of their art school days, the foundation of their betrayal. I began digging into their history, using old yearbooks and alumni records I'd accessed through a university contact. I found a forgotten project they'd co-created in college, a mural in a community center, celebrated at the time as their first collaboration. It was still there, faded but intact, a symbol of their shared beginning. I decided to destroy it, but not with brute force. I contacted the center, posing as a city official, and claimed the mural contained hazardous materials from old paint. I provided fake lab reports, and they scheduled its removal within days. I ensured Clara and Jasper received invitations to a restoration ceremony, only to arrive and watch it being sandblasted into oblivion. To twist the knife, I sent them both anonymous packages, replicas of their college sketchbooks, painstakingly recreated by my forger, but with key pages altered to erase their shared work. Clara's contained notes implying she'd worked alone. Jasper's suggested he'd been a mere assistant. They'd never know the truth, only the doubt I'd planted. I imagined them opening the packages, their memories unraveling, their past rewritten by my hand. At home, Clara was withdrawing further, her art supplies untouched. She mentioned moving to a new city, starting over. I nodded, encouraging it, knowing she'd carry the weight of her failure. Jasper, I learned through a contact, was selling his studio, planning to leave Seattle. Their worlds were collapsing, and I was the unseen force behind it. Lily's drawing still hung on the fridge, a reminder of the life I'd protected, the family I'd avenged. The mural's destruction was the final act. I watched from a distance as Clara and Jasper stood apart, silent, as the wall turned to dust. They didn't speak, didn't look at each other. My revenge was complete. A structure of ruin, built with precision, leaving no trace of my hand. I drove home, the weight of 12 years lifting, ready to rebuild my life with Lily, while Clara and Jasper wandered the wreckage I'd left behind. The mural's destruction was a silent earthquake, its ripples tearing through Clara and Jasper's lives. I'd watched from afar as they stood before the blank wall, their faces carved with loss. They didn't speak, didn't even acknowledge each other, but I saw the weight of their severed past in their slumped shoulders. Back home, I maintained my role as the steadfast husband, cooking dinner while Lily chattered about her science project. Clara was barely present, her fork pushing food around her plate, her eyes fixed on some invisible wound. "You okay?" I asked, my voice soft, my heart cold. She nodded, but the lie was brittle. I kept tabs on Jasper through a contact in the art scene. He'd sold his studio at a loss, moving into a cramped apartment on the city's edge. His social media was dormant, his name a whisper in the art world, tainted by scandal and failure. I'd sent him one final anonymous note, a single line, *, your vision was never yours. *, I didn't need to see his reaction to know it landed like a blade. Clara, too, was retreating. She'd stopped sketching entirely, her studio gathering dust. My plan had stripped them of their art, their bond, their identities. But I wasn't done. Revenge, I'd learned, wasn't just about destruction. It was about ensuring they'd never rebuild. I created a fake scholarship in their names at their old art school, funded anonymously through a shell account. The catch? It was for promising artists who work alone. A subtle jab at their failed collaboration. I ensured they received invitations to the award ceremony, knowing they'd see their names tied to a legacy that mocked their partnership. Clara mentioned the invite, her voice flat. "I'm not going," she said. I nodded, hiding my satisfaction. Lily remained my anchor. We built a kite together, her laughter a balm against the darkness I'd unleashed. But even as I smiled with her, my mind was on the final touches. I wanted Clara and Jasper to carry their ruin forever, a scar no one else could see. The scholarship was one piece. The next would be personal, a reminder of their betrayal etched into their daily lives. I began designing the last act, something intimate, something that would linger like a ghost. Clara and Jasper thought their story was over, but I'd ensure it ended on my terms, with a cruelty so precise it would haunt them long after I'd moved on. I turned my focus to Clara's daily life, weaving my revenge into the fabric of her routine. I'd noticed her reliance on a local cafe, a place she visited daily to escape her crumbling world. Using my burner phone, I posed as a barista and sent her an anonymous text, claiming the cafe was closing due to community complaints about certain patrons. I included just enough detail, her usual order, her favorite table, to make it personal. The cafe didn't close, but Clara stopped going, her safe haven tainted by paranoia. I saw her pacing our living room, muttering about nosy neighbors, and I knew the seed was planted. Jasper was next. I'd learned he'd taken a part-time job teaching art at a community center. Not the one with the mural, but close enough to sting. I contacted the center, posing as a concerned parent, and submitted a fabricated complaint about his unprofessional conduct. I included doctored screenshots of his old social media posts, twisted to look reckless. The center didn't fire him, but they reduced his hours, citing budget cuts. Jasper's LinkedIn updated with a desperate plea for freelance work, and I smiled, knowing his pride was in tatters. I deepened the psychological blows. For Clara, I ordered a custom journal, identical to the one she'd used in art school, and filled it with forged entries, her handwriting, recreated by my forger, detailing doubts about Jasper's talent. I left it in her studio, buried under old sketchpads. When she found it, her gasp echoed through the house. She didn't mention it, but I saw her staring at the pages, her trust in her own memories fraying. For Jasper, I sent a similar package, a fake letter from his college mentor, questioning his originality dated years ago. Doubt was my weapon, and I wielded it like a scalpel. At home, I kept my mask flawless. I planned a family picnic, Lily's joy a stark contrast to Clara's withdrawal. "You seem distant," I said, feigning worry. She brushed it off, but her eyes were haunted. I'd broken her connection to Jasper, her art, her past. Now I was breaking her sense of self. The scholarship ceremony happened without them, the art school's newsletter praising the solo artist fund in their names. I ensured they received copies, a final twist of the knife. The end was near, but I wanted one last flourish, something to seal their isolation. I'd make them strangers to themselves, their lives a maze of my making, with no way out. My revenge was a masterpiece, and I was ready to sign it. Clara and Jasper were now islands, cut off from each other and the world they'd known. My revenge had built an invisible cage around them, its bars forged from doubt, shame, and loss. Clara rarely left the house, her once vibrant spirit dulled to a flicker. She'd started applying for graphic design jobs outside the art world, her portfolio stripped of the work she'd done with Jasper. I encouraged her, my tone warm, but each word was a brick in her prison. "You're better off starting fresh," I said, knowing she'd never escape the weight of her failures. Jasper was a ghost in Seattle's art scene. My contact reported he'd stopped teaching, his apartment littered with unsold sculptures. I sent him one final anonymous gift, a small, cracked clay figure, a replica of a piece he'd made with Clara in college. The accompanying note read, "Asterisk, you were never enough." Asterisk, I didn't need to see his reaction. I knew it would haunt him, a reminder of the dream he'd lost. His silence online confirmed he'd retreated completely, a man erased by my hand. I tightened the cage around Clara. Using a fake social media account, I joined her old art school's alumni group and posted nostalgic photos of her and Jasper's college days, but with subtle edits. Clara's smile erased, Jasper's arm cropped out. The comments poured in, alumni reminiscing about their rivalry, a narrative I'd seeded. Clara saw the post and shut her laptop, her face pale. "People rewrite history," she muttered. I nodded, hiding my triumph. Her past was no longer hers. I'd rewritten it. Lily kept me grounded, her school play a bright spot in my calculated darkness. I clapped as she took her bow, but my mind was on the final act. I wanted Clara and Jasper to feel my revenge forever, not as a single blow but as a constant hum, a shadow they'd never escape. I began crafting a legacy for them, not of art, but of failure, a story the world would tell long after I'd stepped back. The last piece was delicate, requiring precision. I'd ensure their names were tied to a scandal so insidious it would follow them everywhere, a stain no one could trace to me. My revenge was nearly complete, but its final note would be eternal, a whisper in their ears for the rest of their lives. I designed the final act to be a legend, a story whispered in Seattle's art circles and beyond. I created a fictional artist, Mira Soul, a recluse whose tragic tale would eclipse Clara and Jasper's. Using my hacker contact, I built a digital footprint for Mira, social media, a sparse website, even a few grainy photos of a woman who didn't exist. Myra's story was simple. A brilliant sculptor betrayed by two peers, Clara and Jasper, who stole her ideas and drove her to obscurity. I seeded the tale on art blogs, forums, and podcasts, using anonymous accounts to fan the flames. The story spread like wildfire. A local journalist, tipped off by my fake source, published a feature on Mira, complete with leaked sketches that matched Clara and Jasper's early work. The art world ate it up, casting them as villains in a tragedy. Clara saw the article and froze, her coffee mug trembling. "This isn't true," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Jasper, I learned, had called the journalist, denying everything, but his protests only fueled the narrative. Their names were now synonymous with betrayal, not just of each other but of a ghost I'd created. I amplified the myth. I commissioned a street artist to paint a mural of Mira Soul, a faceless woman with outstretched hands, in an alley near Jasper's old studio. It became a pilgrimage site for art students, who left flowers and notes cursing Clara and Jasper. I ensured they both stumbled across it, Clara through a friend's text, Jasper via a tagged Instagram post. Their silence afterward told me the wound was deep, their shame a living thing. At home, Clara was packing her portfolio, talking about leaving Seattle. "I need a clean slate," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. I agreed, my tone supportive, but I knew she'd carry Myra's shadow wherever she went. Lily's bedtime stories were my refuge, her trust a reminder of the life I'd protected. Jasper, I heard, was planning to move east, his career dead, his spirit broken. My revenge had rewritten their futures, and I felt no guilt, only the quiet pride of a job well done. The final touch was subtle. I donated a small plaque to the art school, honoring Mira Soul, placed where Clara and Jasper's mural once stood. It was a permanent scar, a lie etched in bronze, and it would outlive us all. My work was done, but its echo would never fade. Clara left Seattle in spring, taking a job in Portland, her art abandoned for a corporate design gig. She didn't say goodbye to Jasper, didn't even mention him. Our divorce was quiet, a formality she initiated, citing distance. I let her go, my mask of kindness intact, knowing she'd never escape the cage I'd built. Lily stayed with me, her laughter filling our home, a testament to the life I'd preserved. Clara's visits were rare, her eyes haunted by a story she couldn't refute. Mira Soul's ghost followed her everywhere. Jasper vanished to Boston, or so I heard, working odd jobs, his sculptures forgotten. The Mira Soul myth had spread beyond Seattle, with art historians debating her lost works. His name was a cautionary tale, whispered alongside Clara's in classrooms and galleries. I'd check occasionally, using my old contacts, and found no trace of his return to art. My revenge had erased him just as I'd planned. I rebuilt my life with precision. I took Lily on hikes, taught her about bridges, and started a small engineering firm, my days filled with purpose. The art world's whispers about Clara and Jasper were background noise, a distant hum that confirmed my victory. I never spoke of my plan, not even to myself, but I carried it like a blueprint, perfectly executed, its lines clean and untraceable. The Mira Soul plaque at the art school became a landmark, a quiet reminder of my work. I passed it once, driving Lily to a friend's house, and felt nothing. No regret, no triumph, just the calm of completion. The world had moved on, but Clara and Jasper hadn't. They lived in the shadow of a lie I'd crafted. Their betrayal punished by a cruelty so subtle it was invisible to all but me. Lily asked about her mom once, her brow furrowed. "She's finding her way," I said. And it was true. Clara was navigating a maze with no exit, just as Jasper was. My revenge was eternal, not in its act but in its consequence. A story told by strangers, a wound that would never heal. I kissed Lily's forehead, turned on her night light, and closed the door, ready for tomorrow, my heart steady, my hands clean.